Hello to you. I am ASMR Whittle, and today I will tell part 1 of the story of He Who Had It All. A few weeks ago, I actually told the prologue to the story, the intro, essentially. Today I will tell part 1. I have linked to the prologue in the description. You don't need to watch the prologue to understand the story, but it can add something to it. So I just wanted to I hope you're relaxed and I hope you feel good. And I just include this short brushing session to the intro. To the intro of the video, I mean. So I hope you feel relaxed, calm and good today. But this will primarily be a storytelling video. I know this is not going to be like one of the most popular videos I do, but I want to do this anyway. It's a story of He Who Had It All. So I'll be continuing more or less from where I left off last time. You can watch the prologue if you want to fill in some gaps, but I'll try to explain as well as I can from part 1. So you don't absolutely have to need to watch the prologue. So once upon a time, there was a man called Peter. And Peter was rich, he was handsome, and he had like everything in life. He had had success many years ago on doing blogging, and what had made him wealthy. And he had started his own company. He had his, from which he was CEO. This company even had its own glass building in the city. He lived in a wealthy suburban neighborhood with his wife Julia, and they had a very good materialistic life together. One of the neighbors was called Will, and Will was, as Peter was too well aware of, into Julia. Peter knew that Will had a thing for Julia, so he didn't like Will. No, Will was poor and unemployed, unlike Peter, who had it all. And Peter couldn't understand what a guy who had no job had to offer Julia. But the thing about Peter is that even though he had it all, he never really appreciated any of the things he had gotten in life. 40 years ago, his grandma had passed away, and she had told him to be selfless. She had told him that he should always be selfless, and had made him promise that. Now he was 48 years old, and he felt like although the promise he made to his grandma about always helping those less fortunate and being selfless sounded nice, it didn't really combine with the reality of the world. He believed one had to be cynical and harsh in life to get anywhere. That was Peter's conclusions about life. Now, just next door, his childhood friend Arthur lived with his wife and their son Max. Now Max wasn't exactly the friendliest of kids. He was a wealthy kid of about 12 years old, and he was often dressed in nice dress suits, but he was often obnoxious and often demanded respect from other passerbys, demanding that they respect him. Now, Julia actually found Max a little obnoxious. She didn't hide this from Peter. Peter just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I guess he is, sort of." But Julia would often stop Max as he sort of harassed other people and tell him, "You can't behave like that." And Max would just storm off and complain to his dad. And once again, Peter just shrugged. Now, it was now 40 years since Peter's grandma passed away, and his grandma had meant everything to him in his childhood. But he had reflected on this a few weeks ago, because it was a few weeks ago since the day 40 years ago that she passed away. Now, on this particular day, the weather was sunny, it was night, and it was spring. Birds were chirping, It was beautiful outside, and the suburban wealthy neighborhood, and the suburban neighborhood, the suburban neighborhood was sort of shining in the sun. Now, when I said, well, Will was one of the neighbors, she wasn't one of the neighbors next door, but rather further down the area, in a much less wealthy part of the area. Anyway, but today Peter was distracted. He had no time to think about the promise he had made to his grandma 40 years ago. He had to get to work. Yeah. So he took his fancy car, drove it through to the city, not really caring about all the city life, the people going about their days, going to the store, carrying bags out to the stores with all sort of food and drinks in it, or just people sitting on a bench in a park, enjoying their day on this sunny, good, light spring day. But Peter had no time for this. He rushed to the glass office building in the city for the company he was leader for, and where everyone was busy, where both men and females were all working and all going about their busy lives. None of them had really that much time to stop and talk. They all were busy, from the receptionist sitting by the desk to the people working on the computers. Now, it was a rather fancy building, a fancy glass building. It was elegant and beautiful in there, with all sorts of statues and sculptures and stuff. Well, but Peter rushed to the elevator and reached the top floor not long after, and went into his office, where were a series of both cubicles and glass offices, and Peter had the most, as the CEO of the company, had the most fanciest of them all, and there awaited a companion of his in work, Jack. "There you are, Peter. I've been waiting for you. I've got this great idea, but we can just, if we just sit down, we can just go through it." Yeah, Jack was really the closest thing Peter had to a kind of deputy, and he had been very supportive of Peter in his work at the company. So we talked about the details, like Jack would just sort of use a pen and just show Peter the various ideas he had, and then he swapped up a file on the computer and showed Peter all of the ideas. That seems very good, Jack. Great work, Peter said. You're welcome, by the time, in just a few months, I think maybe in a few weeks, Jack said very optimistically, we'll be the most successful company in the city. Great, Peter said. Great. So let's call a meeting, Jack said, and inform them of our progress. Peter considered. I agree. If you have confidence in the plans and in the idea, I agree. I do, Jack said. They called a meeting, and just 2 hours afterwards, everyone was assembled in the lobby. And Jack told them the idea, and then told about the progress of the company. Peter allowed Jack to hold the speech. Jack held a glass up in his hand with champagne in it and said, to Peter, all people around him shouted, both female and males. May this company last for decades to come, and may we become the most successful company in the city. No, in the world, Jack said. And Peter smiled, and then Peter took the word and said, to Jack, and to his ideas. To Jack, the people around them shouted. And then Peter held his speech. Thank you so much for all the hard work you put into this company, Peter said. It wouldn't be possible without each other, and I know, will get there. I know we'll soon be the most successful company. As Jack said, in the world, and then the others shouted, yeah. And then after the speech and the champagne, there was some celebration with food and stuff. The company had done really well this year. But then Peter didn't really have time to enjoy the festivities so much. And soon he had to walk off. He checked with the woman in the reception if there was anything more he needed to attend to. Everything seems fine, she said. Everything seems perfectly fine. Yeah. There's no more letters for you, or no more mails or stuff like that, she said. No requests, she said. Good, Peter said. However, if there are, ask him to send me a mail to my address, and then I'll deal with the requests tomorrow, Peter said. And when he walked out of the glass office building, with a suitcase of fancy papers in his hand, he didn't like to keep all stuff on the computer. He didn't think that was safe, so he had some of it just on paper. And then he drove home in the car after another successful day. But once again, he didn't really enjoy this or this life. It was just work. He could never really sit and appreciate it. And his justification for this was, as he said to himself, I don't have time to appreciate it. If I sit down and appreciate anything, as he thought to himself, then nothing gets done. He went home and once again found Will and Julia talking in the garden. Get off, Peter said to Will and pushed him. Peter said to Julia and pushed him. Peter, Julia said, stop it. Well, he's obviously into you. I mean, he's here practically every day. But he's got nothing to offer you, Peter said. He's unemployed. You won't have a good life if you go with him. And then Peter shut the door. Peter had to admit he knew what Julia sort of liked Will. And he knew that this made him jealous. But he just couldn't see what she could see in someone who didn't have a job. And stuff like that. I mean, he could offer her all safety in the world. Why would she even fall for a guy who had nothing? He couldn't get that. And then a new day dawned. Now, Peter was, however, despite everything, not completely heartless. No, he had a friend from childhood, who he visited today. Yeah. Louis. And Louis was, or Lou, as the friends called him in childhood, was a man when I was 50 years old. And he lived in a very run-down area of the city, in an apartment complex which looked run-down. There were trash and stuff on the outside of the street. Peter did not like stepping footwear, but he felt he had to, for Louis' sake. He went up he went up through the hallways in the run-down building, and then knocked on the door, and Louis let him in. Peter and Louis let him in. Peter, he said. Peter. How are you? How are you today? I'm good, Peter said, just a little tired. You're always tired, Louis. Louis was dressed in very tattered grey clothes, and often wore like a grey head garment. He had very grey beard, and his face was very run down. Peter knew he had a very tough life. He had actually been very well off in his youth, but his life had taken an unfortunate course. And so 10 years ago or so, he had lost his entire family, and it had affected him, and he had never really bothered to recover from it. I just can't stand seeing you like this, Lou, he said. Peter, Lou said, you know I made my choice. I can't go back to the things were, my entire family, when they disappeared. I know, he said, but is there any way you can, find somebody new, maybe? Perhaps get back up again, I can't stand seeing you like this. You've been in this situation for 10 years now. Maybe it's time to move on, Peter said. Move on, Liv said. with sad eyes. I can't move on. I lost them. I lost my family. You just don't move on from something like that, Liv said. That car accident was 10 years ago, took Peter said. Maybe you could find something new. No, Liv said. I can't. But thank you for caring. It's just this area you live in is not exactly the most beautiful area in the city. And when Liv laughed, I know how you think. You're always thinking about wealth and success and stuff like that. And I get that, Peter. I do. I was much just like you, but I learned these past days that there are things in life that matter more. Like what Peter said. Like what Peter said. Sorry, I'm sorry if that created like a disconcerting moment in the story, but it looked like the door just opened itself. Oh my god, sorry. It creeped me out. I'm going to include this in the film because it was so, in the video because it was so, it was just a natural cause, I think. But it just creeped me out a little. There was nothing paranormal about it, just to be clear. It was just I which hadn't locked the door properly. Anyway, let's continue with the story. I know you, Liv said, like, what could matter more than money? Peter asked. Well, Liv said, love, Liv said. Love, Peter said. The love you have to your wife, your children. Me and my wife don't really have any children, Peter said. I know, Liv said, and that's okay, but surely the love you have to your wife will count for something. Yeah, Peter said, it does. I'm giving her the best life possible, Peter said. But love is about more than that, Peter, Liv said. Love is showing you care about someone, too. Huh, Peter said. He reflected on these words as he left the building. He had offered time and time again to help Liv out of his situation, but Liv had refused time and time again. Now, when the next came the next trip or the next destination in Peter's day. He drove to an area he was all too familiar with, and it was an area for commoners in an apartment where lived Susan. And Susan was a childhood, sweetheart of his. She had flowing long red hair and some freckles, but she had been beautiful, as young and still was in Peter's eyes. He sort of helped her financially and supported her. Although he hadn't told Julia too much about it, he was afraid she would be jealous if he did. Hello, Peter, Susan said. Hello, Susan, Peter said, and then we talked about their days and stuff like that. Everything all right with you in your life, Susan asked. Yeah, everything's great. I mean, the company's successful, the relationship's great, mostly, Peter said, and everything's great. But how are you? Susan asked. I mean, personally. I'm great, I'm fine, Peter said, as if he was trying to convince himself of it. I'm just fine. I'm doing just fine. I am great, Peter said. Susan said. And Peter felt a little annoyed because he felt like she could read his mind. You know, if we had been together from the start, I could have offered you a better life than what you live, he said to Susan. I mean, you've been in and out of various relationships for years now, Peter said. That's just it, Susan said to Peter. All you only cared about was the wealth. That's why I just couldn't be with you, she said. And I said this to you countless times, she said. you care so much about the wealth, about the material stuff, but it didn't feel like you cared about me. There's more to life than this, You never just stop and just enjoy the moments, she said. If I enjoy the moments, Peter said, if I stop and there's no one to do the work, Peter said, I can't do what I have to continue to work, to be focused, he said. So what I'll always be able to provide for those around me. I get that, Susan said. But sometimes it feels like you don't give priority to those you care about. Like the success matters more than those you love, she said to him. I never meant it that way, and when he did something he knew he shouldn't, he suddenly grabbed her hand, and then he let go of it quickly afterwards. Sorry, he said. Don't be, she said. It's okay. You just have to understand why we couldn't be together back then. You chose a different life and you chose Julia, she said. And I think you may have done that because it felt safer, She was from a wealthy family and, and even though you weren't wealthy yet, you weren't doing too bad yourself. No, I weren't, Peter said. And you may have a point, but I did have feelings for Julia too. I didn't just fake my feelings for her. I have feelings for her too, he said. Yeah, but that's just that. You're saying you have feelings for her too, Susan said. So I just can't help but wonder, she said. Is she your true love? Peter didn't respond to that. You know what? I'll continue to help you, pay any debt dues you have and help you through all in your life, Peter said, and then stroke her shoulder gently. But I have to get back to my life now. Thank you for the shot. Thank you, Susan said. Thank you, Peter said. So, well, that was Peter's day for the most part. Now, but he was planning to drive back home now, to his nice, comfortable life. But something odd occurred when he drove back on the road. He looked at a park bench in a park he drove past, and he swore he could swear he could see his grandma, but she had been dead for 40 years. It couldn't be. His mind had to be playing tricks on him, and yet he parked and then went out of the car and into the park. He parked the car, went out of the car and went into the park and then looked for the bench where he could have sworn he could see his grandma. But it couldn't be. Peter just couldn't believe it. It just couldn't be. There was not many other people around in the park at that exact moment, even though it was a very beautiful and sunny time of day. But then he suddenly heard a voice from behind him. Peter! And he turned, and his eyes opened wide. It was, or at least it looked just like his grandma. Come sit down. That's not possible, Peter said. Who are you? Don't you recognize me? She said. It's your grandma, she said. No, my grandma's been dead for 40 years, Peter said. Peter, do you remember, she said, what you promised me the day I died? Peter looked at the woman skeptically. Yeah, but why don't you tell it? You promised to be good and kind to others. You promised to be good and kind to others. And to be selfless and to help others. Have you forgotten? She said. I am helping others. I've tried to help Liv, and I'm helping Susan. Yes, but you promised to be kind to anyone, no matter who they were, she said. Life doesn't work like that, he said. And besides, how did you know that? What kind of fraud are you? I'm not a fraud, she said. I'm a grandma. Well, that's not possible because my grandma's been dead for 40 years, Peter said. Peter, I've come to warn you. Turn your life around. Start making the right decisions. Start appreciating your life. Or else you will have to be shown the truth of how everything should be. What do you mean by that? Peter said. Is that a threat? No, it's a statement, she said. I don't mean you any ill. I want you all well. I want you to be happy, Peter. It's what I've been told to tell you. Told by who? Peter said, skeptical. That's not important, she said. Just please turn your life around before it is too late, she said. And then Peter was annoyed and turned back to his supposed grandma for 1 second, and then he turned back and she was gone. And Peter used the entire car ride home digesting it, sort of trying to comprehend this, and he just couldn't get it. This couldn't be his grandma. This had to be some sort of fraud, but somehow had dressed up like his grandma was. Maybe somehow had gotten private information about his life. He wondered if he should call the police, because obviously he was an insane person, loose on the streets. No, like, this could be a really dangerous person. I mean, he felt like the person actually threatened him. It couldn't be his grandma, or could it? No, of course it couldn't be. It just couldn't be. Peter just couldn't believe this could be his grandma. I mean, she was gone. Peter didn't bother to tell his wife about this. He didn't want to upset her in any way. Julia could see Peter was upset. Peter, what is it? She said. You're acting so weird today. Peter was pacing back and forth. It's nothing there. It's nothing. It's nothing. Don't worry about me, Peter said. And then he went into one of the other rooms and took a phone call to the police and asked and told them about the woman, and they promised they'll check into it. Surely they will find some sort of crazy woman roaming the streets, perhaps claiming to be other people from other people's lives, because it had to be like that. His grandma could impossibly have come back from the dead. That sort of thing just wasn't possible. Peter was certain of it. He got another day of sleep, and then he drove back. He was actually intending to drive to work again, but he decided to just drive back to the park to see if maybe he could see the woman, so he could help identify her to the police. And certainly, where he could see her again, he ran up to her. The game's over, he said to the woman. The police are coming. But Peter, what are you talking about? The woman said. You're not my grandma, but I am. The police will find you and they'll get you and place you back at whatever mental place you escaped from. Peter, she said, I am so sorry it had to be like this, but it seems like there's no other way to show you the truth. I want you to be happy, Peter, and this is the only way. And then it was like the entire area was covered in this sort of thick fog, mysterious, ghostly fog, and for a while Peter couldn't see anything. And then the fog lifted, and the woman was gone. What a joke, Peter thought. And then he walked back to the street. But he couldn't find his car anywhere. His car was gone. Someone had stolen his car. And Peter now wondered if it was the crazy woman. He looked for his car keys, but they were gone too. Thankfully, he actually had some money of him. So he managed to pay someone and take a hike home. And he returned to his wealthy villa. Only it looked a little bit different. like it looked like it was painted in a slightly different color, and like had Julia done a paint job on the villa while he was away. And when he was, at the sight which met him shocked him, out of the door came Julia and Will, arms in arms, and they kissed. What? Peter said, and now he felt furious. You can't just dump me for Will like that, Peter said to Julia. And then he shouted, really angry. Peter, what are you talking about? Calm down, Julia said. You can't just, and you can't just go into my house and take my wife, Peter said angrily. And Will just stared at him shocked. Peter, I know these past years have been difficult for you, but me and Julia, we have been together for years now, Will said. I know things haven't worked out great for you, but we have been together for years, Will said. For many years. And Peter just stood with his mouth wide open. What sort of prank or joke was this? This is my house, Peter said. No, it isn't, Julia said. I know you wish it were, but it isn't. You know. No, I made a fortune I became a blogger and I made a fortune, Peter said. I'm sure that's how you wish things turned out, Julia said, but you just have to start facing reality, Peter. Peter, Will said and held him on the shoulder. I want you all well, and I will help you through your situation, money-wise too, if you wish. You're not wealthy, Peter said. You have nothing. Peter, we talked about this many times, Will said. I'll help you, okay? No, that's not possible. I mean, you have nothing, Peter said to Will. It's not possible. You don't own anything. This is my house, Will said. I live here with my wife, Julia. No, Peter said. No, that's not possible. You can't. I mean, that can't be, Peter said. I don't care about the wealth, Will said. I mean, I've been lucky in life for having gotten this, but I just want to share with other people what I have. And Peter just didn't get anything. But please, Will. No, please, Peter, Will said. Just go home, okay? And just calm down and we talk about this later. Peter just couldn't understand. It was like he had landed in some sort of alternate world or timeline. Like the stuff that happened in some movies and stuff. But it couldn't be, Peter said. It just couldn't be. It just couldn't be true, Peter said. Okay, I'll leave it at there, to be continued. And part 2 will come later. I hope you enjoyed the story so far.